DETV Sports Update is powered by DART, Delaware's transit service. Moving forward.
We're joined by Matthew Maurer as always, and now of course our NFL analyst Bill Harmon, who works with the Fox team on Sundays, and then from USA Today and the News Journal covers the Eagles on a national level. Martin Frank joining us in studio this year, so we're thrilled to have him here in Wilmington, and we're going to get to his brain and see everything that he has to talk about the Eagles, what they might do, some stuff here in the offseason, a lot of losses defensively, so a lot to get into with the Eagles. But appreciate you gentlemen joining us here in the studio on a Monday evening here ahead of the draft on Thursday. Bill, how are we feeling? Good to see you again.
Nick, it's always a pleasure. Great to have Martin with us in person. Matty, always a pleasure to work with you. I think it's going to be a very interesting evening talking about these players, but appreciate you having me here, and I'm looking forward to a really fun show.
It's going to be a fun one. Martin, thank you so much for getting in studio. We appreciate you coming here and sharing your expertise with us and giving everybody at home an inside look to what the Eagles might do coming off a Super Bowl trophy. So, Martin, how are you doing here on a Monday, and how's everything been for you here in the process? I know you were in India. It seems like we were talking before the show years ago, but you were in there a month or two ago, and now here we are, the head of the draft.
Yeah, it's been crazy. This has been the fastest 3 months ever. They go right from the Super Bowl to the parade to the combine to free agency. They had a lot of losses in free agency. They signed a bunch of guys, but on one-year deals and stuff. But they tried to plug as many holes as possible so they can go into the draft, trying to find the best player available and not having a draft for need, which is something they've done pretty well over the last several years.
That's right. Again, Howie Roseman is the first GM in history to find 4 straight Pro Bowlers in the second round. So again, he's on a heater there, is Howie Roseman here in the last few years. So we're all going to get into this in just a moment. We're going to go through 5 picks at a time, contrary to what we've done in the past where we kind of go one by one. We're going to speed it up this year so everybody at home can check it out in less than 2.5 hours. So that's the goal for this year. The information will remain the same. We've got action-packed stuff for everybody, so we are going to dive in. But let's just take an initial outlook here overall at the draft coming up on Thursday. Last year in 2024, we had the offensive firepower draft, maybe the best offensive class in some time, and especially out of those first 20 picks. And this year, a little bit different. You got a few guys there, blue chips at the top of the draft, and then anywhere from 10 to 32. It could be who you like depending on the team. That's how wide range of outcomes this draft could be on Thursday. A lot of talent in the middle rounds, towards the end of day 1 into day 2. All those guys are going to be grouped up similar in terms of rankings and grades. So it's going to be a fun one on Thursday. Going to be, like you said, a little bit different and unpredictable. So that always makes it a little bit more exciting. And we're going to dive in here in just a little bit. So, Martin, we want to start with the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, our Philadelphia Eagles here in the region. And coming off that Super Bowl championship, everybody's been celebrating for a few months now. The celebrations are still ongoing. You go to a Phillies game, you're going to see or hear the EAGLES chants no matter where you are. So let's talk a little bit about the Eagles. They've got a lot of losses here defensively here in the offseason, some very surprising. I know the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson trade kind of got a lot of people caught them off guard. He goes to Houston. They get back an offensive lineman there in that, and then obviously some other things. Darius Slay, Isaiah Rodgers, Milton Williams, Sweat. I mean, big pieces of that defense last year. So overall, I just want to say, what do you think the Eagles might do here, and what do you think of all the losses coming in? Howie did say it was going to look a little bit different this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we're seeing right now is the Eagles trying to figure out exactly what they need. They signed a couple defensive edge rushers in Josh Uche and Azeez Ojulari. But they could still draft someone because those guys are on one-year contracts. They lost Milton Williams at defensive tackle. They could draft somebody there, but they are pretty deep there, even still, because they have Jalen Carter and they have Moro Ojomo, who they like a lot. He was a 7th-round pick a couple years ago. They still have flexibility. The only real spots where they're looking for potential starters would be safety with the C.J. Gardner trade. They're going to give the first crack at it to Sidney Brown, as someone they drafted in the 3rd round 2 years ago, but he's been kind of hurt, hasn't really, taken the position. But, it's somebody they could draft in the 1st round there, although they've never drafted a safety in the 1st round in their history, which is kind of crazy. Or they could go, offensive line at right guard is another spot they might be looking for a starter. I mean, they'd obviously like to draft Lane Johnson's successor at some point. They could also look, if Dallas Goedert isn't coming back, and I think there's a pretty good chance that he won't be, they could look for a tight end in the 2nd round tight end is supposed to be a pretty deep position. So, you know, there are so many different ways the Eagles can go. A lot of it depends on who's gone before they expect, or, you know, who's still left. Maybe Howie makes a trade to move up if there's somebody in particular that he really likes, or maybe he says, nah, I'll trade back. I can still get my guy in the second round.
And Martin, we were talking also again before the show, and Adam Schefter had a piece come out earlier in the week highlighting that the two teams, in his opinion, that were most likely to move up or down or to make a move would be the Texans and, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles. And you told me that here before we went on the air when you got in studio. Do you expect them to make a move come draft night here on Thursday?
Yeah, I would be surprised if they didn't. One thing Howie Roseman told us last week in his pre-draft press conference was, you know, they don't have 32 first-round grades, and they're picking at number 32. So, like, you know, if a lot of those players are starting to go and they get into the mid-20s and there are only a couple left, you know, I think it's a pretty good chance that Howie makes a move to move up. And the reason why he would do it is because, like, he has stockpiled so many draft choices both this year and next year. He's got 8 this year, but they're all in the first 5 rounds, so those are pretty prime picks. And they could have as many as 12 next year because of the comp picks. 4 comp picks they're probably going to get for losing the free agents who you just mentioned. So, you know, there's a lot of potential to, you know, package some picks, move up higher in the first round, you know, maybe even trade a player, get more picks. You know, they can do any number of things. It's just incredible, just the options that they have.
That's right. It's going to be a fun Thursday, especially for the Eagles fans. And you mentioned Dallas Goedert. He might be a name, as Martin said, to keep a lookout for to maybe switch places on Thursday.
Martin, I have a question for you. How much input do the coordinators have into the draft process, as best you can tell? I mean, I know you're not in their war room, but you are an insider, and you probably know more than most. And I think our viewers would enjoy, kind of, obviously, besides Sirianni, but the two coordinators. How much can they kind of impact Roseman's thinking?
I think Vic Fangio, as the defensive coordinator, for sure would have a pretty big impact because, you know, he's pretty much designed the #1 defense in the NFL last year, and he's been around. He knows what kind of players he likes, and you can kind of see that with what they did last year in the draft. So I think Vic Fangio would have, like, Howie Roseman's ear. Like, let's say, for example, you know, there's a guy, Malachi Starks from Georgia, who's a safety, and, you know, maybe Vic Fangio says, you know, I really like this guy. He can play nickel. He can play safety. He can do a whole lot of different things. We'd have flexibility with Cooper DeJean. So, you know, I think he would have Howie's ear there. I mean, obviously, Howie has his personnel department with scouts and everything, so they're obviously talking to him. And that's one of the good things about Howie is, you know, he listens to pretty much everybody. I don't know if it'll be as influential with the offensive coordinator, who's Kevin Petula right now, who's taking over for Kellen Moore. I think last year Kellen Moore had more of a say just because he was coming in from the outside. You know, they wanted him to kind of change up the offense a little bit because it had gone stale, like, you know, following the 2023 collapse. But, you know, the guy they promoted, Kevin Petula, has been with Nick Sirianni for the past 7 or 8 years, going back to even Indianapolis. So, you know, I think a lot of what Petullo thinks is what Sirianni thinks, and Sirianni's obviously talking to Howie Roseman. So I would say that Petullo probably doesn't have as much of an influence as Vic Fangio does, but, you know, he'll obviously listen to whatever suggestions they have.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say you mentioned Malachi Starks. I'm a big Malachi Starks fan. I think he'd be the perfect fit for the Eagles if you were happy to get him there. We got him. We'll see where we have him going here in the first round when we get to the mock a little bit later on. But he's a Georgia Bulldog. We know Howie, though, a Florida Gator, loves his Georgia Bulldog. So maybe Malachi Starks could be the pick, one of a few safeties that could go there towards the middle to the end of the first round. And now, Martin, just from an overall standpoint, last year when we were there, you transcribed Cooper DeJean's press conference. I know you were big on Cooper DeJean, et cetera. And you have any guys that you really like this year? Just maybe not to an Eagles standpoint, or maybe two from an Eagles perspective, just but for you personally, is there any guys that you're high on that in this year's draft class?
Yeah, well, Starks would be one of them. Yeah. I also like Shamar Stewart. I know there's been a lot of mixed reactions about him because, You know, he only has like 4.5 sacks in 3 years, but he is 6'5", 267 pounds, and he runs like a 4.5 40.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, he tests pretty much off the charts. And I think the Eagles would be a good situation for him just because, you know, he's not going to have to like be the guy right away. Absolutely. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, they signed a couple free agents, veterans in Ojulari and Josh Uche, and they have Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt. And they also have Bryce Huff, who's kind of a disappointment this past season. So, you know, he could kind of work his way into their rotation, you know, depending on how much he progresses. And then, you know, after next year, Ojulari and Uche are on one-year deals. You can get out after next year from Huff's contract if he doesn't produce. So, you know, I think it'd be a good spot for him to kind of develop a little bit and then maybe take over. So I like him. I like, you know, James Pierce. If the Eagles stay at 32, he's a guy who can come in as an edge rusher. He's kind of built like Nolan Smith, like 6'5", 245 pounds, I believe, but runs really fast. He could be somebody who could produce. The guy from Boston College is also pretty impressive.
Ezraku,
yeah. I have to practice that name.
Me too.
But Donovan Ezraku, he had 16.5 sacks. I mean, that's not nothing. I mean, I know he played at Boston College, and you're not playing against, you know, the SEC powerhouses or anything like that. But, you know, that's not nothing. Absolutely. So, you know, if he's in their range, I can see them going for him. But I would say concentrated mostly on the defensive line. I don't really see a whole lot of offensive linemen in that range who the Eagles would jump at, you know, just because I think if they're going to draft an offensive lineman, it would be a tackle who could replace Lane Johnson. I think by the time you get to the late 20s, there really isn't anybody there who I would consider that. Like, if they were to take someone there, it might be at guard. I don't know. I can't see them drafting a guard in the first round. So I would concentrate mostly on the edge rushers, defensive tackle, and possibly Malachi Starks.
Yeah, Martin highlighting all defense there for the Eagles, which they did obviously in the draft last year. Worked out very well, as Martin alluded to. Vic Fangio having the #1 defense in the league last year. You mentioned Shamar Stewart, kind of Texas A&M guy. He's got that Myles Garrett size to him with that speed. We'll see if he can put that all together here again. I've seen him go in the top 10. I've seen him go as far as 32 down to the Eagles, so another wide range of outcomes for Shamar Stewart, as well as we dive deeper into what the Eagles might do coming up here at pick 32. There's also been some talk a little about A.J. Brown in the past year. I want you to put that maybe all to rest here for everybody at home. I know you got some people out there that are a little bit nervous. A.J. Brown, the Patriots rumors heating up ahead of the draft coming up here on Thursday. Just what do you have to say about the A.J. Brown trade rumors here, especially New England?
Well, first of all, if the Eagles were to trade A.J. Brown to New England for the #4 pick, I mean, the Eagles would have to eat like $50+ million in dead money. And why would you do that for one of the best wide receivers in the NFL? So, and I can't see the Patriots giving up the #4 pick just, you know, to get a guy like A.J. Brown. I mean, if the Patriots were in a position where like he's the missing link to being a Super Bowl contender, all right, fine, go for it. But they need so much, like, you know, that #4 pick, I mean, they could even move back to like 7 or 8, maybe acquire extra picks. That's how much help they need. A.J. Brown is not going to solve their problems, and the Eagles are not going to take the financial hit just to trade him for the sake of trading him, because they obviously consider themselves Super Bowl contenders again, and A.J. Brown is one of their best players.
Exactly right. So again, all you Patriots fans at home, I'm sorry. And for the Eagles fans at home, you can relax and just take a chill pill there. He will be an Eagle Green next year. Will A.J. Brown. Last thing for you regarding the Eagles here at 32. I'm a big fan of Emeka Egbuka. I mean, I don't think the Eagles would take a receiver there towards the end of the first round. We mentioned and highlighted all defense. I'm with you there. I think that's what they may do. But I've seen a few people that have mocked some wide receivers or some offensive guys to the Eagles. Is that a possibility? Are they looking for another receiver or skill position guy in the first round?
I can't see it. Like, if you're going to draft a wide receiver in the first round, it just doesn't make any sense, because you have A.J. Brown, who's on his 3-year deal, I think, kicks in not even this year. It's like next year. So he's signed through 28. Devontae Smith is signed through 29. And the thing with the Eagles is they don't really need 3 wide receivers, because those 2 guys get the bulk of the receptions or the targets even. Saquon Barkley gets targets out of the backfield. I mean, they have a pretty good running back who ran for 2,000 yards. So, and there were a lot of games last year. Jalen Hurts was barely throwing 20 times in a game for 100 yards.
We know, right? The fans, everybody was upset about that for a
while.
But
I will say that, Howie's not afraid to take the best player available. So, I don't know how he ranks his players. I mean, other than he tends to break a tie with the defensive lineman or offensive lineman. But if he has a wide receiver ranked way above one of those guys, then maybe he'll do it. But I would say the chances are maybe 10% at best.
There you have it, Martin Frank saying 10%. The Eagles take a wide receiver / skill position there at 32. Anything else here for Martin here on our Eagles segment?
I got one thing. Yeah. So in the rare instance that, let's say, Howie doesn't get a trade and he's got to take that pick, is there a sense with the embarrassment of riches that Howie and his team have put together, is there a sense that maybe they would take more of a risk at that pick, where you're taking more chances on a player's potential rather than just what you see short term down the road?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. If you're picking at the end of the first round anyway, you're technically taking a risk on somebody. Mentioned Shamar Stewart before. You're taking a risk because, yes, he's got the great size and speed, but he only has 4.5 sacks in 3 years. If he had the production to match his size and speed, we'd be talking like Abdul Carter around, So, yeah, I mean, there's always a risk involved. And the thing about the Eagles is they really don't have any holes where they need a starter right away. So you can take a risk on somebody if you think he'll develop in a year or two, if he's in the right culture, has the right coaches, players around him. If they draft, let's say, an edge rusher or a defensive tackle, well, I mean, they have rotations at both spots, so you don't have to, let's say, throw the guy in before he's ready. You can let him develop. You can let him develop behind a Jalen Carter. I mean, what better way to learn? Same thing at, edge rusher, or even if they go offensive lineman. I mean, what offensive lineman wouldn't want to be taken in the first round with the Eagles so you can learn behind Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, who just signed a big contract today.
And not to mention playing for Stoutland as
well. Exactly.
Which I think is a huge
Stoutland University.
That's right.
Exactly. So,
probably the best in the business.
I would think the Eagles, if they're taking someone at 32, they're drafting on potential more than need. So yeah, that's an excellent point.
All right, Martin, here as we finish up our Eagles segment ahead, picking 32, Super Bowl champions, no problem with that, picking 32. I'm sure they could if they would every year, coming off a Super Bowl title. But you mentioned a few of the players you like. Before we let you go, if I just had to, again, put you on the spot, who would you take at 32 if you were the Eagles, and who do you see them taking? One name you think could be called on Thursday? I know I'm putting this as a tough question that, a lot of people wouldn't get right, but what do you think?
So you're saying if they stay at 32?
If they stay at 32.
I'm going to go with Ezeraku, Donovan Ezeraku.
I
think he'll be there. I think he'll be there for them at 32. I think some of the other guys are probably going to go a little bit earlier. And if Howie's still at 32, he's probably like, really wanted that guy, and sees him go at 28 or 29. But I think Ezeraku will be there.
I like that. I think that'd be a good proof for him there at 32. So again, the Eagles coming off that Super Bowl will pick last in the first round, but 20 picks in the next 2 drafts. That's more than they've got room for on the roster, as Martin alluded to earlier. So a lot of wiggle room for Howie to work with here in this year and next year's draft. Martin, Frank, we really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us here.
Thanks, Martin.
Any closing words to all the fans at home here as we gear up for a big draft on Thursday?
Yeah, I would just say that, as with almost every year with the Eagles, Howie's going to do something you're going to be scratching your head saying, well, what are they thinking here? I go back to 2020 when they took Jalen Hurts in the second round, when they had Carson Wentz. You can make any number of, head-scratching picks, but it's going to be interesting, especially this year, because there are so many guys who could either be midway through the first round or midway through the second round. it's going to be a really wild draft, I think.
It is going to be wild, entertaining. A special thanks to Martin Frank covering the Eagles here for us, the News Journal, and on a national basis here. Martin, thank you so much. Again, you can check out all his work at DelawareOnline.com as well. And I'm sure he'll have a piece out on Friday morning talking about what the Eagles did on Thursday night. Martin, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us here in studio on a Monday. And of course, maybe we can get you back to talk about what the Eagles did do next week or a week after here, after the draft concludes with what they did over the weekend. So Martin, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We're going to take a break here in our draft preview. When we come back, we're going to dive into the mock draft here, 5 picks at a time as we get through the first round. So we'll be right back here on DETV.
How did DETV start and how did you get here?
DETV started approximately 10 years ago in the basement of my home. I had an idea to show people of color doing great things, but what happened was I got to the point that I said, I'm gonna just show people all together doing great things. The motto and the moral was to bring people together instead of using media to rip people apart. And doing that, you know, I just did a lot of hard work, a lot of free stuff, a lot of things of just showing people being themselves. I figured that media, and I saw that media wasn't doing that, so I just decided to give it a shot, not knowing that it would bring me to where I am today. I had a great journey doing it, met some amazing people, did some amazing things, worked on some amazing projects, you know, and with just a lot of hard work and a bunch of sacrifice, I'm here today. I done worked on everyone's campaign in the state of Delaware. And now, you know, I'm just doing what I do and doing it with friends. My biggest accomplishment right now would have to be this, hands down, without a doubt. We want to make sure that we inform the community wholeheartedly. So again, they can have all the information that they need. For more information, you can find us at detvch.com. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook under DETV. Be sure to check us out. Tell me what you think.
Live inside DETV. After the break, a special thanks to Martin Frank for joining us here in studio, talking about what the Eagles might do, giving us the inside look into what Philadelphia could do at pick 32 this year. So an honor and a privilege to have Martin in, and hopefully we can get him back here next week to talk about what they do when all of this is concluded. So guys, before we move on here, did anything stand out about what Martin said about the Eagles coming up here pick 32? I know we expected some movement. I kind of think they may trade up or back, but anything stand out to you about what Martin said?
Well, I'd have to trust Martin certainly better than my judgment, but it feels like he's pretty certain that they are going to make a move. Mm-hmm. And since there haven't been any trades so far, which has been very unusual.
That's right, yeah.
Wouldn't be unusual for Howie Roseman to pull something out of his hat between now and draft day, or even on draft day. The only question I probably should have asked Martin was, how far do you think he wants to
go up or back?
Trade up to? Yeah. That would be the question that I probably should have asked him. I don't know if that's middle or even higher than that.
Yeah, and we'll find out. Howie, who knows? He's going to keep us all guessing here by Thursday. Matt, anything you say stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same thing. I mean, I think it was just an interesting dive into probably what Howie and that side are thinking. I agree with him. I think knowing Howie's ability to move and taking pieces, I'm sure he's going to make some moves. He's got some room. He's got some things he can move with in that draft.
He certainly has a lot of currency.
For sure.
That's right, yeah, more than anybody.
Which is a huge factor.
And Martin also mentioned, and totally slipped my mind, of course, because I'm not keeping track of all these things, but the compensatory picks that he has stockpiled that he can certainly include to move up.
Absolutely.
I think it will be huge for him in this draft.
Yeah, so they've got some ammo to work with. We'll see what they can do towards the end of round number 1. But again, sitting pretty, got some depth to make up on defense, so we'll see where they go, and I think they'll lean that way come Thursday night. All right, guys, let's dive into the mock here. We're going to go 5 picks at a time, and then dive into each team and each player here as we get through our mock draft special here in 2025. And it all starts at the top with the Tennessee Titans, who a few weeks ago, or I should say months ago, it was a big question mark They were saying they were going to take a generational talent at number 1 overall, and that kind of had people thinking maybe it was Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. But we know almost for certain now it'll be the quarterback out of Miami, Cam Ward, who will be going number 1 to the Tennessee Titans. And if you want to look anywhere, you can check Vegas for that one. I think he's minus 2,500 to go number 1 overall. And he was doing a live stream playing some video games last week when somebody asked him, hey, who are your favorite receivers in the league? And he said Calvin Ridley and Treylon Burks. So that kind of gives it away there. If those are your top 2 favorite receivers, he's trying to, get on their good side early. He's going to be a Titan. Cam Ward, 6'2", 219. He's 23 years old. You can see the highlights here. He's been through a couple different schools. He's very confident. That's evident in his gameplay. And when you talk to him, experienced, fifth-year senior, 57 college starts on that resume. Rocket arm. He could throw the ball through a brick wall. He's got that type of arm. Strength for sure. So again, when you think about Cam Ward in terms of overall big board of prospects, and me will probably be in the 12 to 16 range. We'll see. I'll have all that finalized by Thursday. But he's going to go number 1 overall here. And when you think about the classes in the past, and I know you guys know, and I loved that draft class last year with the quarterbacks, and it seems to be on a pretty good trajectory here early. Cam Ward, and that would be in more of the J.J. McCarthy range in last year's class, or even maybe ranked a little bit lower than J.J. McCarthy from Michigan, just to put it into overall grade perspective there. But he will be the number 1 overall pick here this year to the Tennessee Titans. So we'll see, again, kind of in the middle first-round grade, though. Bill, what have you seen out of Cam Ward? And, again, there are 2 generational prospects potentially, in my opinion, in this class, in Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. If you were the Titans, again, it's a quarterback-driven league. Would you take the quarterback or maybe one of those 2 other guys?
I probably wouldn't take the quarterback. I like Cam Ward, but he hasn't played under center much. He's played at a number of different schools. He has a great arm, as you've mentioned, but what he loves to do is thread the needle, and that needle is going to be much, much tighter in the NFL with the closing speeds of safeties, linebackers, and, of course, cornerbacks. So, I mean, I see their issue, and they need help there, but I'm not sure. It feels to me like such a stretch. I would be probably the one guy that would say, hey, let's trade out of this pick.
That's right.
Let somebody else. Or I believe that for the positions 1 through 5 in the draft, you take the best player available, not necessarily the need. And in this case, well, we'll talk about that later, but I'm not sure Cam Ward fits that, to my humble opinion. I
agree with you again. Again, not a top 5 prospect on my big board. We'll go number 1 overall here. Matt, what do you think? Again, been pretty good evaluator here at quarterbacks. What have you seen out of Cam Ward, and would you take him number 1 overall for the quarterback-needy Titans?
I agree with BPA, best player available, so I probably wouldn't take him number 1 just because I'm a firm believer in you take the best talent available. But I will say this, if management came to me and said, we need a quarterback, he'd be the guy I would take in this draft at number 1. There's things I don't like about his game. I mean, I do like the fact he does take risks, but sometimes he plays hero ball a little too much that I'd like. I think his mechanics are inconsistent, especially when he's throwing on the run. So there's things about him that I like as a player, but there's things from a mechanical standpoint that will hurt you in the NFL when those defenses get a beat on you and they figure out, oh, he drops his elbow a little too much. Oh, he slings it a little. So those are things that he's going to need to clean up at the next level.
Again, sure. Cam Ward going to most likely, as we mentioned, go number 1 to the Tennessee Titans. So Cam Ward, again, will get the keys to Tennessee and a quarterback-needy team. We'll see how he does, but he will be the number 1 pick on Thursday night. Again, you can check out, we'll have our big boards and rankings coming out on Thursday morning here on DETV and as well on Fox Sports 1290. But let's keep it rolling here. Dennis, if we could see the top 5 picks here on the latest mock that we have here on DETV as we get those images up on the screen for you. So Cam Ward at number 1, and that will take us here to number 2. And Adam Schefter, one of the most plugged-in guys there in the league, saying about the Cleveland Browns, they were not going to take a quarterback. He said this a few months ago. So instead, it would be for us here, Travis Hunter, the quarterback wide receiver out of Colorado. A lot of traction building up for Hunter to Cleveland here, guys, as we get closer to Thursday. What do you guys think about Travis Hunter? I have him as my number 1 overall prospect on my big board coming into this 2025 draft. Most likely, you're seeing a lot of people talk about him wanting to play or kind of focus on corner defensively and maybe moonlight some offensive series and different packages on offense for whatever team he decides or gets selected by. Rare two-way star, but he's just 6 foot, 188 pounds. He's 22 years old. So again, he dealt with some injuries last year at Colorado. We'll see if he can stay healthy in the NFL if he's taken some of those hits. Springy, instinctive playmaker. He can go up. He wins 50-50 balls. Super athletic. And again, I think he's the #1 prospect in this draft. We got him going to Cleveland there at number 2, guys. What do you think?
Well, I don't like players that tell me what positions they have to play. And I'm not sure what his best position is. Personally, I think it's cornerback, but his dimensions aren't as great as some of the other great cornerbacks. There's no question he's a super athlete. He's very driven. There was a wonderful piece on him in the Sports Illustrated recently. I love his competitiveness. I love his work ethic. So if there's a guy that can probably overcome some of these deficits, it might be him. So I don't object to you putting him there. I just, you wonder, where is he really best suited to play?
Yeah.
And
That's
that they will find out, and maybe it is a two-way player. We haven't seen many of those recently, though.
That's right. That is a good point there, Coach. Top-ranked prospect of the 2022 class, man. And we remember back when he was at Jackson State, we had Esias Guthrie, when our Delaware State transfer on. He played at Jackson State, a few years ago. So he was the #1 overall recruit. Shocked everybody going to Jackson State. Then obviously made his way to Colorado. So an interesting player here in Travis Hunter.
Yeah. He's my #2 prospect. I have a dual Carter I like better.
We'll talk about him in a moment,
To me, the problem I have with Hunter at the next level isn't that I don't think I would take him 3rd if the way the draft falls. I mean, 2nd overall talent, but again, if you have to take a quarterback first, it'd be Cam Ward. Then I go Abdul Carter, then I go Hunter. The thing I worry about with Hunter is he's got a really lean body. Yeah. And he's trying to do something that's very hard to do with a lean body, and that's play the NFL wide out position and the NFL cornerback position. Strength, I think, will be a little bit of an issue for him at this level. I just think he's putting a lot of stress on his body, and I think it will be a compound issue at the NFL level. So I'm all for taking the chance and rolling the dice. Just to me, I think he's biting off a little too much to play both sides of the ball at the NFL level.
Well, it's going to be one of the most intriguing, him and his Colorado teammate, Shedeur Sanders. That's going to be the most intriguing storylines coming in on Thursday night. Cannot wait to see Travis Hunter's first preseason game, what position or who he plays for to be determined. So Hunter there, if we can put the top 5 picks back on the board, Dennis, and that takes us to 3, 4, 5. So we'll jump through these 3 and then get our overall perspectives here. It starts with the Giants at 3, and it's been talked about. They quarterback needy as well as the Titans for weeks. There was Shedeur mocked to the Giants for months. Shedeur wore the Giants cleats in his final game at Colorado, and so a lot of stuff there. Malik Neighbors, a fan of Shedeur. But here, I think you have to go with Abdul Carter. I think, again, out of the 2 top blue chip prospects, I've got Carter. As Matt said, he's his #1. My #2 in Abdul Carter. A fantastic pass rusher out of Penn State, 6'3", 250, lightning speed, explosive 3-year starter for the Nittany Lions. A lot of people compare him to Micah Parsons. I mean, they're different players. Micah Parsons, a little bit bigger there and stuff like that, but he's got double-digit sack potential. I know he was hurt towards the end of that year, and if you watched him in the playoff, with that hurt shoulder, was still just wreaking havoc on quarterbacks and such a disruptor in the backfield. He's so great at getting upfield and the closing speed as well to get to those quarterbacks. He can make plays in the run game. Again, he dealt with some injuries. It was talked about at the combine. It was revealed he had a stress fracture in the foot. Will not need surgery, they're saying, but that's kind of was alarming to see there during the draft process, but he's projected to be good to go. Not a lot of question marks. Abdul Carter here going 3 to the New York Giants. I had a chance to talk to Patrick Callaway, the new football general manager for the University of Delaware, and one thing he did bring up to me was, again, a couple years ago he was an off-ball linebacker and kind of made that transition this year to an edge rusher, and that's kind of where he's going to be drafted because that's what the league needs, and he's very good at it. But they kind of got worn down towards some of those games. Again, he's smaller a little bit in size, and when he go up against those big offensive linemen, he made the point that he would get worn down in some of those games, into the 4th quarter and stuff like that. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Nobody's perfect, but your guys' thoughts on Abdul Carter. And then New England Patriots at #4, drafting for position. Will Campbell, you either love him or you hate him from what we've seen so far. The tape is fantastic. A 3-year starter blocked for Jaden Daniels and Nussmeier that last year, 2 very good quarterbacks. Not a lot of flaws. You don't mention his name much, and that means he's doing his job. You see him here, left tackle for LSU, was fantastic there. The arm length came out during the draft process. It was less than ideal, and a lot of people may be thinking he could play guard. I think he can play tackle in the NFL. You get that Joe Tooney comparison a lot. He was upset that the arm length was brought up when they asked him about it. He said, this is the first time I've heard about it, and I've been playing, for 4 years here at LSU or 3, and everything's been fantastic. So we'll see what happens there. Patriots need an offensive lineman, probably their biggest need of any team's need in the draft coming in this year, and he's 6'6", 320. I think he's going to be a great left tackle in this league, even without that arm length and a little bit of that size. Your guys' thoughts on Abdul Carter and Will Campbell?
Well, I think Abdul Carter is the best player in the draft. He's the most impactful. He's a rare combination of power and speed. Whether he wears down or not, give him a break. He was wearing Parsons' number. He played a lot of reps. He played through injuries. He had that injury they talked about with the stress fracture in his right foot. He's going to be fine. This guy makes plays, and he will be very impactful. You go to Will Campbell. I watched a lot of him because I love watching offensive linemen.
Yes, you
this
do.
guy has great feet. He has great balance. He did have a couple false starts, but he gave up 1 sack in 30 games. This guy can play arm length or not. I care about how they look when you watch the tape and how do they play.
That's right, and Will Campbell didn't allow a sack across 491 pass block snaps. He also registered the fastest max velocity, 18 miles per hour, of any offensive lineman during the season back in 2023. Just 2 sacks in total across 557 attempts in 2024. So, he was almost flawless.
And by the way, the Patriots need some help on the offensive line to protect May. And May can't throw when he's on his back. So this is going to be a great pick for them, I think.
And again, if you look at that offensive play, as you mentioned, Coach, from last year, Matt, they got rid of everybody. It was one of those things where it was by far the worst line in the league. It was just hard to watch, and that was kind of the reason they didn't want to throw Drake May out there earlier, because they were concerned about his health. Do you think Abdul Carter 3 and Will Campbell here 4 to the Patriots?
Yeah, I think this is, analysis, paralysis by analysis. I think Will Campbell is a slam dunk for New England. I think you run to hand that card into the commissioner. Look, Campbell, I know we nitpick when we talk about prospects, but the thing about Campbell is, no, I wouldn't compare him to like a Joe Alt, who was flawless,
6'7",
and had all the measurements. But I'll say this for Campbell: he played in, whatever your feelings are, the hardest conference in football, and he more than held his own, and he was the guy. So that would make me feel okay with taking him here. And the only thing I would say that maybe that New England might, and again, it depends on how New England's thinking about this, they also might start looking at Genty as well, just maybe leave some of that pressure off May. But I will say this, again, the way that May plays, you need an O-line. He's got to be protected. So to me,
and running backs need an O-line as well.
That's correct.
As you well know, Matt.
Yes.
That would be my counter to
It would be
that.
crazy for me to take Genty, but I wouldn't be shocked if they look his way, but I think Will Campbell's the right pick.
I'm with you there. I'm all for Will Campbell there. In New England, of course, Abdul Carter, number 2 on my board to the Giants. I think it would be their pick there if he were there at number 3. And to that point, if we could put the 5 picks back up there, Dennis, I think Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, I think that whoever goes first, whoever the Giants take the other one. So that's what I'm going to go there, 2 and 3, Campbell 4. And then another guy I love here, the defensive tackle from Michigan, Mason Graham, who again, now you're starting to get some people maybe drop him a little bit down as we get closer. He's been kind of mocked to the Jaguars, who need desperate help interior on that defense. With the worst defense in the league last year, and Mason Graham, the best potential run stuffer in the class, can also get after the quarterback. I like Mason Graham, 6'4", 300 pounds, but again, the small arms has been talked about here lately. A former wrestler, I'm a fan of that, and the second best run stuff rate in college football. So again, 3.5 sacks in the 12 games. You'd like to see him get after the passer a little bit better, but fantastic in the run game. I think he's as one of those maybe next level closest things to a blue chip prospect here in this class.
He plays with great leverage. He has a burst. He can be versatile. They can play him in some different spots, the 1 and the 3 technique. This guy is a keeper, and I really like your pick here.
I like Mason Graham as well.
Oh, yeah. I think people are leaving out the fact that they love to talk about his arms. They love to talk about all this other stuff, but they're leaving out the fact that he knows about body position, being a former wrestler. So I think he overcomes that. I think this is a great pick here. I have no problems with this.
So we'll see. We've also, we've heard some things. Genty has been kind of talked about here in the rumblings of Jacksonville at 5. I don't think that'd be the right move for them, even though they do need a running back there. I think you got to take Mason Graham if you're Jacksonville. The defense has been so bad. Let's go put up number 6 through 11 here on the board, and we're going to fly through this one as the Las Vegas Raiders picking at number 6, and they're now being influenced a little bit, guys, by Tom Brady, who's in that front office, or I guess you'd say in the ownership group now over there in Las Vegas. And a lot of mocks have this running back from Boise State, who we just mentioned, going in the top 10. You're seeing in the big boards, he's around the 3 to 5 range. He's that good of a running back. Here he is, 6 to the Las Vegas Raiders. And again, I'll have the final mock draft coming out on Thursday, and I wouldn't be surprised if he actually slipped a little bit from this spot here at number 6, guys. I think he may go a little bit later. I think his floor, though, is 10 to the Chicago Bears. I don't think he gets past Chicago. I know Ben Johnson looking for a running back there after revamping that offensive line in the offseason. So Ashton Jeanty, almost everybody's favorite player in this draft from an entertainment standpoint. Just 5'9", though, 211 pounds, 2,600 rushing yards last season. He was 28 yards shy of that record by Barry Sanders. 2-year starter for Boise State. I mean, he can do it all. If you ever watched the highlights, he was fantastic all year long. He was one of the big faces of college football, but it was at Boise State. He is a running back, a position that, you know, a lot of people don't like spending first-round picks on, especially you talk about the top 10. So, Bill, I'll start with you here, and then we'll get into Matt, who loves Jeanty as well. What do you think about Ashton Jeanty? Is he a top 10 prospect to you? And if you're an NFL team, again, taking running backs, especially in the early part of the first round, can be frowned upon. What do you think about the Raiders and Jeanty here? Again, I'm leaning on kind of maybe having him slip past Las Vegas, but for this mock draft tonight, he winds up with the Raiders.
I wouldn't take him because I wouldn't take a running back this low. Yeah. Jeanty is he's a generational talent in terms of how he played at Boise State. He has great hips. He has some of the best change of direction of anybody you've ever seen. Look at Tomlinson. That's who my my analogy is. But my one issue is 9 fumbles. And that
doesn't get talked a lot about.
That will get you to the seat pretty quickly in the pros. So he has had some ball security issues.
And let me ask you this before we move on and get Matthew's perspective here. Does the competition part get to you at all? Him being at Boise State, I mean, obviously playing against a little bit less than SEC-type competition there. Does that worry you at all?
And not really, because just when you watch him on the tape, he just makes moves that nobody else can do out there. So, yes, could a SEC linebacker maybe tackle him? Possibly, but I'll tell you what, he showed up in the big games, but I just do worry about his ball security issues. But in terms of a talent, change of direction, a burst, all that, he's got great balance. He's great after contact. He's pretty special that way.
Matthew, Ashton Jeanty, your thoughts? Is 6 too high for the running back?
No, I don't think so. Not when you got a guy. I mean, I just don't think you'll find a lot of Jeantys in most drafts. Again, I think that at a minimum what you have is you have a workhorse back who's going to come in there and get 20 to 25 carries. I think the fumbles are a little scary for sure, but I think the difference, one of the other measurables that he has is I think he's got like something like almost like 1,800 yards after contact.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty impressive for a running back. So he's also used to not playing with an elite offensive line. So he has to create a little bit more separation when he runs. I think this is a great pick for the Raiders, who desperately need to get some offense going over there.
Yeah, and we'll see if they go defense or maybe somewhere else there for value. But Ashton Jeanty, they do need a running back in Las Vegas, 2,600 yards. Also had 23 catches, in that offense. I think he'd be a better pass catcher with more opportunities as well if you're getting somewhere else. If we could put 6 to 11 back up for everybody, we'll get 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. The Jets at number 7 have been mocked different things throughout the process, and a lot of them now has been Harmon, who has been flying up the charts. A huge combine for the offensive tackle, the junior out of Missouri. 6'4", 332, wide-bodied, has got that size. Most likely going to be a right tackle early, but then could obviously move to left tackle depending, once he gets that experience. I mean, the combine was fantastic. He ranked first among tackles in the 40, the bench press, and the broad jump. So he was number 1 in all of the stats. And you got to be a little bit weary about these guys, especially the offensive linemen that fly up the boards in a lot of these draft classes. And again, we talk about the offensive firepower in last year's class, and a lot of these tackles would be 4 or 5 on that list coming in this year. So it's going to be a little bit different in terms of grade, but Membo is one of those big guys that's flying up the charts. He's going 7 here to the Jets, who desperately need offensive line help. Takes us to Carolina at 8, and a guy that I really like, a linebacker out of Georgia, in Jalen Walker, 6'1", 243. When you watch the tape of that Georgia defense this year, I mean, he was all over the place. All you saw was number 11. I mean, when you watch and you go back and check out the tape last year coming in, if you were to look at mock drafts coming into this season of college football, it was Michael Williams from Georgia, who was the #1 pick on a lot of boards coming into the season. And then when you went back and watched the tape, it was Jalen Walker who really jumped out at you. And to me, will go now ahead of Michael. I think he had a fantastic year for Georgia, a little undersized, but was just all over the field at linebacker. And then at New Orleans at #9, I got him taking this has been a popular Shador spot with Jackson Dart. I mean, Mickey Loomis can do anything. He's all over the place here each and every year. So I'm going to go with a wild card pick, a guy you heard Martin talk about earlier, maybe to the Eagles. Well, I'm going to have him off the board here at 9, and that is Shamar Stewart here from Texas A&M. Again, these are not my rankings. This is a mock draft. Rankings will come out on Thursday. 6'5", 270, 21 years old. Could be the most fascinating prospect in the draft. 4'5", 40 with that type of speed and size is crazy, guys. But again, you heard Martin, 1.5 sacks in his 4.5 sacks in his career, 1.5 in just this season in 12 games. So that's got to worry you a little bit. Dennis, if we can put up the 6 through 11, but there you have it. At 7, it's Membu, Panthers, Walker, and then the Saints, I have Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. And then if the Bears, who I think would love to get Ashton Genty at 10, but if he is gone at 6, 7, 8, or 9, I have him pivoting to another fantastic prospect in the tight end from Penn State, Ty Warren, 6'6", 256, an older guy. He kind of almost doubled or tripled his production here this year as opposed to what he did in the previous years at Penn State. So, I mean, if you were to point to one thing, that might be it. He's got a high game IQ, versatile. I mean, he can play all over the field. He played quarterback in high school. He's a huge athlete. He can run you over. He's deceivingly got a little bit of speed that you can't really locate. You see him wearing number 44 there. Kind of reminds me of Dallas Clark as a receiver for Indianapolis. But he's so versatile. 104 receptions, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns in 2024. They handed him the ball as a running back, but again, a late bloomer there at Penn State. So there you have it, guys. 7 through 10 with the Jets. It's Membo, Walker, Stewart, and Warren. What do you guys think of those picks here as we get to 11, man?
I don't want Stewart.
And I don't blame you. Again, rankings are different, but I'm with you.
Because here's my thing with and this happens in the NBA as well. To me, to have these numbers, it's like, well, great, you got the measurables, but where was this on the field? Because on the field, I don't see what it's like the Mike Mamula effect. You know, Mike Mamula years ago went to the combine, killed it, and then he played like, looked like Tarzan, played like Jane. So it was nothing was there. So I always have a problem with these guys that come out of nowhere and they put up these numbers. I would rather take a chance on a guy like James Pierce from Tennessee, who had the measurables, just had some off-court issues, off-the-field issues. I'm more okay with that. Shamar Stewart just scares me. He's the type of guy that, like, you pick him and, fans are like, why did you pick a guy that's not even on the field anymore? So, that just worries me when you have all these measurables and then I look at your stats and I don't see the measurables play out. It's worrisome to me.
You know what? I'm with you again, mocking here 9 to the Saints because, hearing some stuff there. Cameron Hayward's on his last leg. They need another pass rusher there in New Orleans, somebody that kind of mimics that, a little bit of that size for Cam Hayward would be Shamar Stewart. I'm kind of with Matthew, Coach. I have him more in the back end of the first round for me in terms of grade or where I would take him. How do you feel about the giant, the combine freak from Texas A&M, Shamar Stewart?
Oh, I care about production.
Me too.
I care about what I see on the field, and everybody can test. You can almost game the test
right,
by spending a lot of time at whatever training facility.
That's right.
And that's great. Obviously, he's a terrific athlete. I'm not taking that away, but there is some disconnect there between this terrific athleticism and then 4.5 sacks in 37 games. And especially because you're going to find some mismatches where you're just way better than that tackle or that tight end who's chipping you or whatever. I wanted to talk about Membo real quick because we've got a lot of guys. I think this would be a great pick for the Jets. I'm very high on this guy. What I like about him is you see some really good offensive linemen at the line of scrimmage. You see some in pass pro, but this guy is really good at the second level. He can climb the second level. He can sustain blocks, and that's very difficult. They can also pull him, and I think he's got some versatility where he could play guard or tackle. And the Jets clearly need some help on the offensive line, no matter who their quarterback is. But otherwise, your picks are fine, but I happen to coincide with you two guys on Stewart. It's just because, he might turn out to be a great player. So be it. I wouldn't take that risk myself.
I agree with you guys there. I'd take him more towards the back end.
And by the way, I think this Tyler Warren can really play too.
I was going to ask you on Tyler Warren.
I love his versatility. I like the fact that he's a terrific athlete. He's a great kid. I've heard him talk before. I tend to want to travel with somebody that's really bright and somebody who's a high character guy. And I take a shot on him at almost any spot. Not at 1 or 2, but certainly in that level. And the Bears could use a tight end.
I think so too. Again, I think they may
You can have a couple good tight ends in pro football today and be able to use them judiciously.
And again, I mean, before we get there, though, as well, I'm a big fan of both. I like Warren, and I love Colston Loveland as well. We'll see who I have ranked higher coming Thursday. But both of those guys, I think you can't go wrong with either one of them. So we'll see where Colston Loveland lands as we progress here into the mock draft. All right, Dennis, we go 11 through 16 now for everybody at home as we are cruising through round number 1 here. Again, draft kicking off on Thursday night up in Wisconsin. So at number 11, it starts with Matthew's team, the San Francisco 49ers. And I gave him your boy, Matthew.
Thank you.
Will
Appreciate
Johnson,
that.
who
I'll
we're all
take
fans
that.
up here, the cornerback out of Michigan. Again, depending on where you have Travis Hunter and what he's playing, Will Johnson could be the number 1 cornerback potentially in the class. And number 12, a guy that I just can't seem to pin when you talk to people, and that's Tet McMillan. I've seen him as high here, 12. I got him going to the Cowboys at 12. He's got huge size. I don't like the Mike Evans and Drake London comparisons. I think those guys were a little bit more physical, a little more polished. So again, I don't think he's to that level yet. I got him going 12 here to the Cowboys. They need a guy opposite CeeDee Lamb. Maybe it could be Tet McMillan, but I've heard some people have him ranked 50th on their board. Some people have him ranked 5th. So again, you're going to get a wide range on Tet McMillan. The one thing that worried me a little bit about McMillan was he wouldn't run the 40. The speed was a big question coming in. He declined to do it at the combine. He did it off camera at his pro day. I couldn't even really believe it. You really don't have where somebody runs something at their pro day and there's no record of it. So it must have been either in private with coaches or something. So they put out their own number of 4.45 or 4.45, I believe was the number. So again, take that with a grain of salt. We don't know if it's true or not. I'm not as high on McMillan as some other guys, but I got him going 12 here to Dallas. Again, 6'4", 219, wide catch radius. You know, can go up and get those jump balls. A volleyball player.
And a basketball
player early in his career there. That takes us to Miami here at 13. A lot of people not as high on this guy either. He's slipping a bit, but I have Kelvin Banks, the left tackle for Texas. I think he's getting a little bit too disrespected here as we progress into the first round. I got him here at 13 to Miami. Armstead now retiring for the Dolphins, and they've needed offensive line help even if he was healthy here these last few years. So I got him taking Kelvin Banks. Again, he's played left tackle for 3 years. Maybe could play right tackle for you in the NFL as well, but I think he could be a left tackle. So needs a little bit of work, but I like Kelvin Banks. I got him 13 here to the Dolphins. That takes us to 14 in the Indianapolis Colts. And Colston Loveland, another one of those tight ends with him and Warren that I really have ranked close together. I like both of those guys, and if you're looking for a tight end, I think you can't miss with one of those two. So Indianapolis misses on Bowers last year. They get Loveland this year here at a Michigan National Championship with J.J. McCarthy, 6'6", 250 at 21 years old. You got to go back and watch the tape from when they had J.J. McCarthy. It was just a way more sound offense, more in rhythm. That's where you can kind of get the picture of what he could be. Has to become a little bit of a better blocker, but an excellent pass catcher. And again, that 23 season tape is fantastic. And that'll take us now to 15, the Atlanta Falcons. Team needs has to be an edge rusher. We thought it was going to be Turner or Liatu or one of those guys last year. Instead, they shocked the world. They take Michael Penix Jr., which in retrospect now, you look back on it, he's their starting quarterback going forward. We'll see what happens with Kirk Cousins. But I've got Mike Green, the edge rusher out of Marshall. A few question marks with Mike Green here, a few character issues off the field, a sexual harassment allegation in high school, and then another one there at Virginia. So, one time, you never know, but to have two has some teams maybe a little bit thrown off, one at high school, and then the reason he had to leave Virginia to transfer to Marshall was he was suspended for another sexual allegation assault. So he confronted that. He said, denies it, and he said that at the combine. He talked openly about it. But again, off the field's a different issue. When you look on the field, 17.5 sacks. He was the best pass rusher in terms of sackage in the entire college football world last year, even at Marshall. And they played games. He played against Ohio State. They couldn't stop him. He was fantastic all year long, even with that upper level of competition. So again, I've got Mike Green here, 6'3", 250 at 21 years old, explosive. But I got him, again, 17 sacks, 22.5 tackles for loss, and I've got him going to the Falcons at 15. So let's unpack here, guys. 11 to 15. Dennis back on the board for everybody. It rounds out with Mike Green, but it starts with Johnson, then McMillan, Banks, Loveland, and Mike Green there to the Falcons. And we'll talk about Jahdae Barron here shortly.
Well, I really like Will Johnson. He's a production guy. 9 picks, 3-4 touchdowns. He had turf toe this past year, so he didn't play as well or as often. But I'll tell you what, in the past, in 23, he was a terrific player. I like his length. I like his dimensions. I think he's going to be a great player. McMillan, I'm a big fan of because of his overall athleticism. I love the catch radius. All the stuff about his speed. They'll figure that out pretty quickly. I just like his size. I like his ability to find holes in zones. I think he's going to be a terrific receiver. And I don't think there's any doubt that this Colston Loveland can really play.
Yeah.
I've watched him run. He's very graceful. He's balanced. He and Warren are terrific players. And I don't think there's a tight end who's a receiving tight end that comes out of college that doesn't have an issue with maybe having to block.
No doubt. Yep.
So let's, whether they put him in line or they flank him out and do a lot of different stuff, he can move. He moves well in motion too. So I think he's going to be a great player. And there's no doubt, I've done the Falcons enough to know they need some edge rushers. And,
For
Green
years
may,
now.
and as I said, I'm not, I care about characters, so those things somebody else would have to evaluate.
Yeah.
But when you watch this guy on tape, he really flashes. This guy can play. He runs the bend really well. He's got great hands. He's explosive. He's a playmaker. If you can overcome some of those other issues, I think he'd be a terrific pick.
Yeah, I've been big on Mike Green there throughout early in the process, and now we're seeing that rise I thought we would see here as we got closer to draft day. Matt, your San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
Will Johnson, they got your guy here in my mock draft and started off. Be big for them after losing Ward there.
Huge. I also think we'll take a long look at Kelvin Banks from Texas.
I
I
agree
think
with you.
offensive line is just a mess. Other than Aaron Banks and Trent Williams, and Trent's due to retire anytime
soon. Right.
So we definitely need some succession planning there. I love Loveland as well. I think in a normal draft, if you didn't have Warren, I think he would have gone easily higher. Probably where you have Warren mocked, he probably would be there.
And some people, sorry to cut you up, but some people, you're right, some people have Loveland ranked ahead of Ty Warren as well coming in, to your point.
Yeah, I have Warren a little bit higher, but that's only for I think he can extend plays better than Loveland. That's as small as it is. And as far as McMillan, I love the size, and I think Dallas definitely needs some help for CeeDee Lamb, because CeeDee Lamb really struggled at times last year, being the only guy that was a consistent threat, for Dak to throw the ball to. So, yeah, all that makes sense. I don't think any of these picks, including Mike Green, who, Mike Green cost himself millions of dollars, didn't he? I mean, you're talking about as talented as he is, if he would have never had these character issues, I mean, he might have been jockeying for a top 5 spot here in the draft. So this is going to either be a pick with Mike Green where they're going to take him and we're going to say, man, he should have gone higher, or man, you see where he got picked and he's out the league because he couldn't keep his behavior under control. So look, I think it's a great pick for Atlanta, and look, Atlanta needs defensive players. They need the defensive players.
I mean, you talk about Jacksonville needing interior defensive line help. The Falcons are right there with maybe the biggest need of the draft being a pass rusher. Again, maybe thought last year they would have got with Dallas Turner, but instead they went with Penix Jr., and we'll see how that, again, looked pretty good towards the end of last season. So now we'll get into pick 16, and we'll go through 21 here. Jahdae Barron from Texas. Again, I've got him going to Arizona here at 16. Arizona, kind of a tough one there to think about what they might do here in the middle of the first round, but I think Barron's a fantastic corner. 5'11", 194. He's 23 years old. Watching the tape on him, I think he was very impressive. Made some nice plays on the ball. Had 5 interceptions, 11 pass breakups in 16 games, but also 67 tackles. So he can get up on the line. He can line up anywhere defensively and make some plays in the run game as well. So again, I've seen Barron go even a little bit higher than I have him here at 16. Also seen him go later, as is going to be the case with a lot of guys we talk about in this year's draft. So I got Jahdae Barron going to the Cardinals at 16. We're going to jump to 17 out for the Bengals. Trey Hendrickson, of course, requesting a trade, a few months ago. They need, of course, pass rush help on that defensive line. I got him going with Mykel Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia, who we talked about earlier. Could have been the number 1 pick, in a lot of mock drafts heading into the college football season. He was a top 5 prospect and a lot of number 1 on people's boards. Didn't quite have the season they expected him to defensively here this year for the Georgia Bulldogs. But again, he's 6'5", 260. He's under 21 years old. I've heard a lot of people maybe wanting to get him higher in the draft. So they see, of course, what a lot of people saw coming into the year last year. And again, it's all about what you can, of course, foresee in the future and what you can forecast. So he's got a lot of fans in the league. One of the highest upsides, elite length, excellent athleticism, 8.5 tackles for loss and 5 sacks in the 12 games with the Georgia Bulldogs. So it would not surprise me if he were to go earlier. But for here, we've got him 17th in Cincinnati. I think they would love to take him there in the middle of the first round. That takes us to 18 in Seattle. And Matthew Golden, who lit up the combine, is flying up the boards as a lot of people's number 1 receiver over Tet McMillan. In this draft, he's going as the 2nd or 3rd wide receiver behind Hunter and McMillan here at 18 to the Seattle Seahawks. So again, they trade DK Metcalf to the Steelers. JSN, one of the only guys really they have as a receiver. Locke, I think, still there, but they need receiver help, so they go with Matthew Golden, 5'11", 191. Again, 58 catches, almost 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, a 4.29 40, just below Xavier Worthy there at the combine. So what a job he did. But he is, of course, you think about Seattle, they have Jackson Smith and Jigba. So a little part of me has a feeling like maybe they like Emeka Egbuka, who's more of a bigger wide receiver. He can block, he can do both. I think he would be a better fit for Seattle in Egbuka. But again, a lot of people love Golden with that speed and playmaking ability, so we're going to go with Golden here at 18. But would not shock me at all if Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State joins his former teammate in Jackson Smith and Jigba there in Seattle. At 19, the Tampa Bay Bucks, I got a guy that would have been a top 10 pick had not been for the injury last year, and that is Jahad Campbell, 6'3", 235, an off-ball linebacker who got to see with a little towards the pass rush in the season as well. He had potential there, made plays on the edge, as well as being an off-ball linebacker. 117 tackles. I mean, he is all over the field. He is the linebacker you want, and with Levante David coming back on a one-year deal in Tampa, I know Dennis is a Bucs fan. I think we'd like to get this guy in Jahad Campbell. Did have surgery for that torn labrum earlier this year, so training camp is still in doubt. And again, if it wasn't for this injury, he'd be a top 15 pick, I think, most likely, maybe even top 10 as a linebacker. Ran a 4.52 40, 10.7 broad jump. He can do it all there. He's a fantastic defensive playmaker there at the linebacker side. And then at number 20, the Denver Broncos, Omarion Hampton. We talk about fits and needs. Jacksonville at 5 needs interior defense. Atlanta needs a pass rusher at 15. And Denver needs a running back here at 20. And I think they would love to take Omarion Hampton, who I love, out of North Carolina. He's done it for 2 years now. Was fantastic last year with Drake May. They lose Drake May this year. And again, he puts up even better numbers in this North Carolina offense without him. So Denver has been rumored to try to trade up. We don't know what that's for. Maybe they got eyes on Genty if they're trying to go up that high, but if they just want to go up a little bit, it'll be for Omarion Hampton. So Dennis, we can put these picks up on the board for everybody at home here as we get through, again, 17 through 22. We'll talk about Shedeur in itself here at 21, I'm sure, in a little bit. Rumors the Steelers might not take him, but I don't know. I feel like you can't pass up Holman at 21. We'll see if he gets there. And then I love Gray Zabel, the guard, big guard out of North Dakota State at 22, versatile, played anywhere on the offensive line, had a fantastic Senior Bowl, had a chance to transfer schools, decided to stay home, could have went to the SEC, could have went to the Big Ten. He stayed at North Dakota State, and then he went down to the Senior Bowl and pretty much took those guys out anyway that were there from the SEC, et cetera. So he held his own there. He's been fantastic, can play anywhere on the offensive line. Zabel, 22. To the Los Angeles Chargers, who again took Joe Alt last year. Harbaugh loves that offensive line. I think he'll slide in and be a fantastic guard for the Chargers from day one. So there you have it. Picks on the screen, guys. 17 through 22 here in the first round. What stands out to you guys?
I mean, I love Jahad Campbell. I mean, if there's any fit for Todd Bowles, it's a guy like Campbell who's a hybrid who can go out there and just cause carnage the way that Bowles likes to set that up. I think it's funny, if the Broncos are trying to move up to pick Genty, I actually think Hampton works better for them. I think he's a better pass catcher. I think he's a slightly better blocker than Genty is right now. They also picked up Evan Ingram, which is huge. It's going to be huge for their young quarterback that they're trying to have. I'm a huge fan of Zabel. I think if he played anywhere else, he'd probably be a lot higher. There's even some talk that he might play center. So, like, he's all over the place. That
would be the best fit for the Chargers. They need a center, I think, even more so than a guard. They can get him to play center. That'd be fantastic.
And then, Shedeur Sanders, there's so much talk, and it reminds me almost of Will Levis, because if you remember, the Will Levis talk was he's going to be a top 5 pick. That was all the talk. And then when it didn't happen, we're like sitting there like, oh, well, the next team's going to take Will Levis. And we're still the next team's going to take Will Levis.
He had a long wait in that green room.
Long wait. Beautiful ex-girlfriend, by the way. But long wait. So at least he had good company, right?
Well, that's what people remember from that.
Exactly. But the thing about Shedeur Sanders is I don't know which way the smokescreen is. Is this a smokescreen to knock him down to the Steelers and they're just trying to play their best bit of poker? Or is this legit where it's like, I don't know. In the NFL, it typically is whoever they say is going to get picked high doesn't get picked that high. And whoever they say is going to get picked low will go higher than they say. So it's like, you also remember Mac Jones was slated to 49ers at 3rd, which I wish we
called 16.
Which we still ended up getting him in free agency, but we took Trey Lance at 3. Yeah. So there's, this is a game right now that these guys are playing. They're trying to talk guys down. So I don't think he's going to fall out of the first round. I just don't.
Coach, what stands out to you here with those picks again? 16 up through 22. Dennis, we can put it again. What more did you see? Shador there and Travis Hunter. But there we have it, 6 to 22 as we get to the middle of the first round. What stands out to you about those picks?
I love Barron. I love his versatility. He can play a lot of different positions, plus he can play in special teams, and he's a very good athlete. Totally agree with you about Campbell. Campbell, when you watch him on tape, has that rare ability to make yourself skinny in certain holes for his blitzing. And how do you say Levante David? He can't play forever, and he'd be a perfect fit because whether he plays edge or is an off-ball linebacker, and I think he could do either, they do a lot of things with their linebackers down there, a lot of off-ball drops and things in their zone blitzes, so he'd be a perfect fit for that. And I love Gray Zabel, not only because he's from North Dakota State, but I've watched a lot of him. I mean, I love really smart, tough linemen, and this guy can play any position. You're right, he can play center guard, he can play both sides of the ball. This is a guy that you want in your program. Whether he's an immediate starter or he's a guy that you groom maybe for a year or two, he would be a great fit anywhere. If I was coaching, he would be a pick of mine.
That's right. I'm with you there. And again, he had the chance to transfer, decided not to, went to the Senior Bowl, and again, made those guys look bad there at the Senior Bowl. So you know he's got it and going to be a great pick for somebody there. Jim Harbaugh loves those offensive linemen. We'll see if he gets them there at 22. So now if we could put 23 and up there on the screen, Dennis, it starts with the Green Bay Packers, who again, they need some wide receiver help, but they're known for not taking receivers in the first round. They always take them in the second round, etc. So this one, Martin's going to be mad at me. I've got Donovan Ezeraku, who we wanted the Eagles to take at 32, the 6'3", 248-pound defensive tackle from Boston College and an edge rusher. He can do everything there. Got that bendy edge you're looking for in a rusher. 3-year starter, high energy, 80 tackles. You talk about production, that's all there. 20.5 tackles for loss, 16.5 sacks this year in just those 12 games. Packers would love to have him on the defensive line. That takes us to 24 in the Minnesota Vikings, guys. A league low, 4 picks in the draft here coming up this year. So we'll see what they decide to do. Maybe they'll trade this pick and acquire some more capital. But if they stay here at 24, I like Nick Emanwari, the safety out of South Carolina. So on my big board, I will have Starks ahead of Emanwari when that comes out on Thursday. But for the mock draft, I got the Vikings. They're kind of linked here to the safety from South Carolina. 6'3", 220 pounds, can come up and of course, make plays in the run game as well. 3-year starter in the box, can play deep. Again, can really come up and hit you. So Nick Emanwari is really flying up. A lot of people like him as well. I got him slated 24 to the Vikings, who desperately need some help there on the back end at safety. That'll take us to the Texans at 25, and they need, of course, they've had some bad luck. Diggs now in the offseason after getting hurt. Tank Dell's not going to be ready for the start of next year. So they've got just Nico Collins, who's a very good receiver, but they're going to need help there. But what do they do this year? Because we saw what happened to C.J. Stroud, guys, last year without any help on the offensive line. He looked like a completely different quarterback. And not only that, they trade Laramie Tunsil in the offseason. It was their only kind of secured spot on that offensive line. So what do? I have them taking Josh Simmons, the senior offensive tackle from Ohio State. I really like Josh Simmons. We heard earlier about Adam Schefter reporting that Houston's going to be very active on draft day. We'll see what that entails. But Josh Simmons, I really loved. And again, he's one of those guys at Ohio State. If he doesn't get hurt in that game against Oregon, I think he's a top 10 to 15 pick, I think, any day of the week. Again, 6'5", 317, 22. He's a very athletic blocker, quick feet, strong hands. Again, we're not sure when he's going to be cleared, and that's going to be the reason is when are you going to get Josh Simmons. But if you're a team that can afford, maybe to wait a little bit, and I'm not saying the Texans are that team, but I think he's the biggest bright spot and the best guy to take here with the most upside for sure. I think when healthy, he's one of the best tackles. He could be the best tackle in the class when healthy.
Oh, I agree with you on that. There's no doubt. But again, it's that thing to me. A big guy gets an injury. How long is it? How quickly do they come back? Mm-hmm. And then when you do come back, how productive are you? That's right. Emanwari, I really like. Mm-hmm. I want to go back to that pick. Absolutely. I think this guy is really good. He's rangy. The Vikings love to play their safeties down in the box. Harrison Smith in particular. Right. Flores. I think this is a great pick for Minnesota if they decide if they want to stay there, if he's available. I think he's the best safety in the draft.
There you go. Nick Emanwari there. Coach has him as the best safety on his board. Matt, what do you think here as we got 23, 24, and 25 with Ezeraku, Emanwari, and Simmons?
I agree with you on Simmons. I was a big fan of him. The injury definitely killed some of his stock. Yeah. Ezeraku, Donovan Ezeraku, my problem with him is there's just certain things that I worry about him at the next level with mechanics and with being the way he sometimes isn't able to break free from guys once they lock in on him. He's great on the initial step, but some of that hand placement on the mechanics to get past, to put the swim moves and to get past guys, he struggles with that. If he's not able to dominate his matchup athletically, he struggles. And so I'm a little worried about that with him. I think he's a workout wonder. I think he's another guy that really improved his stock at the combine. I mean, he was easily one of the most impressive guys there when I watched on the NFL Network. So yeah, I think 23 is a little rich for me, but I'm not totally against it. Again, I think this is the type of draft where I think we're going to see a lot of guys that are going to be starters. I don't know how many of these guys are going to be prime-time starters. I think there's going to be guys that are just, they're going to be very serviceable and they're going to be great pros, but they might not be, where you build your team around.
So that takes us here to 26 with the LA Rams, and a lot of talk heating up this week, and we're going to see now, as you see, this is my rounding out of the first round. I have just the 2 quarterbacks in round 1. You've seen some people have 4. Jackson Dart has certainly most been in all of them. I might even have him there in terms of my board, but he will not be in this mock draft. Hearing more and more things about the quarterbacks slipping and not a lot of people wanting to come up and make moves for these quarterbacks. Again, it hits draft week, so that could all be a lie and a smokescreen, as Matt said, and we could come out and there could be 5 trades for coming up for quarterbacks on Thursday. But the sense that I'm getting right now is that that's not going to happen, and we could even see maybe potentially Shedeur fall to the 2nd round. So we'll see what happens, but as of right now, I have Jackson Dart out of the first round here unless somebody trades back up in there, which we didn't mock any trades in this mock draft to go. But the Rams, they have been linked to Jackson Dart, and Stafford getting towards the end of his career. But again, if you're the Rams and you're trying to win right now, they need help in the secondary. I'm going to go with Maxwell Hairston, the cornerback out of Kentucky. Again, this is a draft for need. They did bring in Jalen Milroe for a visit, so something to keep an eye on. I can see them making a move back in the 2nd round to take Jalen Milroe if they're looking for a quarterback. But we're going to go with the cornerback from Kentucky here, 5'11", 183. Had that shoulder injury last year, but looked pretty good when he was out there. So again, Maxwell Hairston was going to be a couple guys down on my cornerback board, but we'll get into the first round here to the LA Rams at 26. That'll take us to 27, and I think this is one of the perfect fits. We talked about Graham to the Jags at 5 and some other ones, 15, Mike Green. Well, one I feel similarly about is Malachi Starks here to the Baltimore Ravens. You pair him up with Kyle Hamilton on the back end. Starks might be my favorite safety in the draft, the junior out of Georgia. You watch the tape from 2 years ago. He had all those interceptions, and that's kind of, again, was a top 10 prospect in most mock drafts, and then this year didn't quite have that same ball hawk, or at least stats to show for it. So didn't have as many interceptions. People were expecting that to come up like he was 2 years ago. He had just 1, I believe, on the year this year. So that kind of put some teams off him. But again, you go back and watch the tape from a couple years ago, and he looks absolutely fantastic. 3-year starter for Georgia, outstanding athlete, can play all 3 levels, in the box, in the slot, from deep. Again, you look at that early success at Georgia, he is a football player. And again, I like to draft some of those. So give me Malachi Starks to the Ravens. He is a Baltimore Raven, plays like a Raven there at 27. Our own Jason McCall says he likes Derek Harmon in the interior defensive line. He's a Ravens fan, so just some insight from Jason there. But I got Malachi Starks to the Ravens at 28. Again, some losses there for Detroit up front. They do have, of course, one of the best offensive lines in the league, so let's continue to bolster that. They could use an edge rusher again with Aiden Hutchinson, or a linebacker, but I'm going to go with Donovan Jackson here from Ohio State, who after Josh Simmons got hurt in that game against Oregon, slid out to left tackle, was a fantastic guard, and then held his own at tackle on the way to a national championship for Ohio State. So he showed his versatility, 6'4", 315 pounds. Again, played guard, was a fantastic guard. When Simmons went down, they moved him out to tackle, and he still had success there, obviously on the way to a national championship. So a nice season for Donovan Jackson. He's a first round here for me at 28 to the Detroit Lions. That'll take us to the Commanders, and that's where I have the defensive tackle Derek Harmon from Oregon, 6'5", 313, a standout there in his time in Eugene, 3-down contributor, 45 tackles, 10.5 for loss, 5 sacks this year in 14 games. Does have to finish a little bit better. You'd like to see him rush the passer, of course. They say that about all of these defensive tackles. But Derek Harmon had himself a very good year. Washington losing Jonathan Allen, etc. They need help up front defensively again, so I'm going to go with Derek Harmon from Oregon. But again, Kenneth Grant from Michigan, a few of those other guys could be slated in there on the defensive line as well, including this young man here from Ole Miss. Again, some character issues for the Walter Nolan, who we have here at 30 to the Buffalo Bills. The Eagles have been linked to him a little bit as well, but he's a fantastic defensive tackle. 6'4", 300 pounds, 6.5 sacks this year. Transfer from Texas A&M. He's been linked to a lot of teams. Wouldn't shock me if he went actually earlier than number 30 to the Bills, but he does have some character issues. You talk about him and Mike Green as the 2 guys with some character issues off the field. field. We'll see if that affects them, because on the field, they were fantastic. And Nolan, one of those guys, 30 to the Bills, could help out Ed Oliver and that interior defensive line for Buffalo. At 31, this was a tough one for me, guys. Kansas City, it could go a couple different ways. I'm going to go with Josh Connerly, the offensive tackle from Oregon, who, again, not a lot of people have towards the end of the first round. But we saw what the Eagles did to them when they tried to move Joe Thuney out at tackle, and they could not stop anybody. So they need some help up front once again. Same thing they did after they lost to the Bucs in the Super Bowl a few years back. So I'm going to have him, again, might be a reach for some people, but I'm going with Connerly from Oregon, 6'5", 311, a 2-year starter at left tackle, quick feet. He was the number 2 tackle in that high school class, so he's got the pedigree, and I think the Chiefs could be taking him there in round number 1. So before we get to the Eagles there, guys, we'll decipher 26 through 31. Dennis back on the board for everybody at home. So, guys, let me know what you think. Coach Bill, dive on in.
Well, I like this Maxwell Harrison. He had the fastest 4.28, and he's a little undersized for me at cornerback. I tend to like taller corners, but this guy's a playmaker. He is an underrated tackler. He'll come up and hit you on the edge, and he can also fit into the box if need be. So I think he's fine. I think Connerly to Kansas City would be a great pick. They're going to need some help. How did we see those tackles do in the Super Bowl?
That's right.
They were overwhelmed. Connerly's at 31 or wherever.
Yep,
I think he'd be a pretty solid pick there. He's got good feet. He's a little bit of a project. He needs to work on his overall strength and his conditioning, but I think he's going to be a fine player for him.
There you have it. Matthew, what stands out to you there before we get to the Eagles there? Starks to the Ravens, Jackson to the Lions, Harmon to the Commanders, Nolan to the Bills, and Connerly to the Chiefs. So some help up front, both offensively and defensively.
So I love Walter Nolan. I think I think he was the 3rd highest sack at defensive tackle. I think he was the 3rd highest among all the prospects in this draft. So that's tremendous right there. I think you're getting a discount because of all the off-the-court shenanigans, of course. Connerly, interesting thing about him, he didn't play any other position. So if he struggles at all at left tackle, he doesn't have any experience to play guard or center. So you're stuck with a guy that if he doesn't work out, he's never even played right tackle. He's always played left tackle. So that's the bigger problem with him. And then as far as James Pierce, I thought he was the best prospect in the combine when I saw him on the NFL Network. I mean, he was zipping through drills, laser quick, superior high twitch. He's a guy that I just think you take a chance on. I think, and when you pick him 32nd, I mean, that's a dream right there.
Yeah, I'm with you. So that's who we have slotted at 32 to the Eagles. James Pierce Jr. Heard Martin talk a little bit about him. And he's one of those guys that, throughout the process, people say, man, if he somehow winds up with the Eagles, man, the whole league is going to be upset about it, and he might be that good of a player. So we hope they're right. But again, you look back, he's 6'5", 250, has that size. You talked about the speed. He fills all those, combine warrior as well there for James Pierce Jr. He was a force in 2023, but again, one of those guys in 2024 that, again, the stats just didn't match up to what he did the year prior. But again, on tape, you can see what he can do, and again, a little bit of coaching, and he could be a very impactful player as an edge rusher here in this year's class. And I think he'd be a great fit for the Eagles there. First team All-SEC, one of 15 players to reach 23 miles per hour on a play, and this was back in 2023. So again, one of those guys like Starks, where we looked at the tape 2 years ago and really liked what you saw. Not that you hated the tape from last year, just you saw some better stuff. When you think back in the past, like Derek Stingley, who had that national championship year with all those guys, was fantastic, and kind of fell off the next year. And what have we seen him? He's become a fantastic corner. So again, you got to look back at the old tape as well, and I think that's where we could see some of James Pierce Jr. I think it'd be a nice fit for the Eagles at 32. I think he could turn into something special, as Martin said, working with that defensive line, that coaching staff, and those guys to learn from in front of him. So that'll wrap us up for the first 32. And Coach, you have a feeling on James Pierce Jr., a thought?
I didn't watch a whole lot of tape on him, but the little bit I saw, he plays a little stiff. He's a little upright. I think he's trying to figure out what his best moves are, and I think that's something that a lot of these guys have to develop, and that's what he gets trained for. But at 32,
right? Yeah,
I don't think it's one of those things where you say, okay, we'll take a shot and we'll develop him. Plus, with their edge position right now, they're fairly solid. Now, who knows what happens with Huff down the road and then and all that. But I think this guy certainly wouldn't be a bad pick at that point.
Well, let's dive now. So that is the top 32 as we have. If Demis, if you have the whole image of the top 32 picks, we can throw that up there for everybody now, just to give some insight on all 32 we have here in the mock draft for round number 1 coming up on Thursday. And while that gets up there, we'll get to before we head out of here, I have some, again, first round and early second round potentials here and a list of guys that I think could make their way into the first round, but would be nice picks there early in the second as well. And as the list, it starts with a guy I already talked about. As you see, the top 32 picks there all across the first round for everybody there at home. And then for some other guys here that can make their way in here before we get out, Emeka Egbuka is a guy I really like from Ohio State. I've seen him again. We'll see where he is on my board come Thursday, but I've seen him in the top 20 a lot. A lot of people have him in the second round, but he can block. He's got the size. He can catch. He's one of those Ohio State pedigree wide receivers. I think Egbuka is a little bit underrated heading into this draft on Thursday. We'll see where he ends up, whether that's late first or early second. Kenneth Grant, another guy that could be taken, I think, from anywhere from 20 to 32. Fantastic. Another defensive tackle there from Michigan. He had a great year. Tyler Booker is rising up the charts. He is the guard from Alabama. I have him here in the second round, but some people have him going anywhere from 24 to 32. He did receive a green room draft invite, and again, not necessarily meaning he will be taken early in the first round, but notable that he was invited to the draft there and to be there in person, so something to look out for. Luther Burden III, as you see here, the NFL draft prospects that will be on site on Thursday. So that can only give you a little insight to where they may go. And you see guys like Shamar Stewart, Jalen Milroe, and a lot of questions there. So we'll see where those guys end up, because you don't want to put them on that list unless you maybe hear something that they might be going a little earlier. So Luther Burden III would have been a top 15 pick coming out last year, was one of the best high school wide receivers in the country, decides to stay at home at Missouri, which again could have went anywhere, but he stays with the Tigers and had a less than impressive year there. So he's one of these big question marks. Are you going to see what you saw in high school, again, as one of the top receivers in the country, or are you going to see what you saw there at Missouri with that kind of production? So a lot of people love him, and some people aren't as high on Luther Burden. He's going to be one of the most interesting. Him and Ted McMillan at receiver, and then Jackson Dart, where will the quarterback go? Some, again, linked to some people there. People have him as high as 9 to the Saints. Carson Schlesinger could be getting into the end of the first round. People love the linebacker out of UCLA. I've heard great things about him. We'll see who decides to take him. It's going to be late first or early second. And the same thing with Trey Amos for the cornerback from Ole Miss. Travion Henderson, the running back from Ohio State. Jalen Milroe, of course, the quarterback from Alabama. Then Siobhan Rebel Jr., quarterback from East Carolina, would have been a top 20 pick had he had not gotten hurt. The talented cornerback there from ECU. He got injured, so he's slipping. He'll be an early second-round pick. And then Jalen Noel, the wide receiver from Iowa State. People, of course, a lot of people seem to like him as well. I like Jalen Noel. We'll see where he ends up. Early second round in my prediction, but we'll talk about all that on Thursday when you can check out the big board of the mock draft out online. But, guys, anything or thoughts on the first round and some of those second-round guys there, Matt?
I don't believe anybody that says that there will only be 2 quarterbacks selected. I just think the NFL can't help themselves. I think they love quarterbacks.
I know I'm the odd man out here with only 2 in the first round.
No, I mean, but look, that's what all the intel is saying. So I get it. I'm no criticism over here. I'm just saying, to me, the way the NFL has always been about quarterbacks, I would be shocked if either Jackson Dart or Milroe isn't taken at some point in the first round. But then again, like I said, this is also the same draft process that told us Will Levis is going top 5, I promise you. And he went top 5 in the second round. So anything can happen. So but it really would shock me, especially Jackson Dart, because Jackson Dart started off as a prospect that was underrated.
That's right. I'm a Jackson Dart guy.
We both were, and then he got a rise, and now it seems like now the market wants to then be realistic with him. I just don't buy that. I don't think the market goes away that fast and that quick, especially when he performed well in the combines and everything else. I just think he hasn't done anything to blow it. So usually when prospects come from being overrated to underrated and then underrated to overrated, anything can happen. But I just would be shocked if Jackson Dart doesn't get in the first round.
Bill, in Vegas, odds juiced heavily to over 2. The odds over under is 2.5 quarterbacks in the first round. I've only got 2, but it's juiced to the over. So Vegas is telling you it might be over 2.5. I just want to say before we continue, I'm not a Jalen Milroe guy, first round guy. I do not think I wouldn't take him in the first round. I'd be pressed to take him in maybe the first half of the second round. Either. Where do you see some of those guys, and what do you think about that situation?
Well, I think the biggest X factor, wild card in this whole draft are the quarterbacks.
Yes,
I haven't been a big fan of them when you watch a lot of them. They all have some good things, obviously, and then some deficits. I happen to kind of like Milroe. I think he reminds me as much as anybody as Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying he's going to be Lamar Jackson. I'm just telling you that he has those characteristics.
Sure.
When you watch this guy run, he flashes on tape. I mean, it's
the speed
incredible.
I forget. I don't have the 40.
It's speed, it's hips, it's vision. 40, this guy, almost maybe they should change positions for him. He's not a bad passer. He's going to obviously need to go through his progressions better. But I want to go to Egbuka. Do you know he's the leading receiver in Ohio State history in terms of receptions?
See, he knows.
With all that talent they've had there, I mean, that's
Wow.
amazing to me. So again, I'm a production guy, you know, what have you done? I mean, he may not have the greatest test results and he's not super tall, maybe his catch radius and all that, but this guy catches the ball and they find him. So I like that. But going back, and the other guy I think is really intriguing, though I don't think he's going to go in the first round, is Schlesinger. I watched a lot of him. I happen to like linebackers a lot. This guy can really play. I mean, he's productive. He's tough. He's a 3-down player. He's good in man and in zone. He can blitz. He's really good at run stopping. Has great instincts, and he's terrific. Supposedly a terrific person. So I kind of, you can tell the way I go for certain people, and he would be a pick at some point. I'm not saying he's a first-round guy, but I think you've done a great job of identifying this, and it'll be kind of fun to see what the quarter 2.5. I don't know which way I'd go.
I
on
know,
that.
right?
I think I might flip a coin and
right
put it in my
right?
pocket. But anyway, it's been great fun with both of you guys as always, and we had a really good show and a lot of good points, and it's just fun to be here with you two guys. Always enjoy your perspectives, Matt and Nick. Great stuff producing this for us.
Thank you so much. A special shout out to Dennis for putting it all together there behind the glass. And again, Emeka Egbuka, we'll see what happens with him, and especially during some of those other guys. Milroe had more offense against Georgia in the last couple of years than all the other quarterbacks combined.
Kirby
Smart's
Smart's happy to see him go.
Kirby Smart is happy to see him go. So we'll see what happens there. But thanks for tuning in, everyone, here to the 2025 Mock Draft Special. Draft coming up Thursday night, 8 o'clock. You can catch the big board, the final rankings, etc., all on Thursday morning. So thanks for tuning in there tonight. Hope you learned something. And it's going to be an exciting Thursday draft up in Wisconsin. Very unpredictable coming up on Thursday night. So for Matt and Bill and myself, Dennis as well, we will see you next week here when we decipher what we saw over the weekend.